Good afternoon, America. We are live on Facebook. Welcome to Lessons from the Front. I am your host, Todd Boeding. And as always, we are sponsored by Carry the Load. We are Carry the Load, I guess is probably the better way to put it. One of these days, we'll get a sponsor. So if anybody's actually listening out there, let us know if you're interested in sponsoring this and underwriting it, because we've got fantastic guests still to come. But today, we're going to focus on one of my very dear friends through Carry the Load, and that guy's name is Jj Leonard. Jj Leonard, former Marine officer. Welcome to Lessons from the Front, sir.
Thank you, Todd. Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. You know why, very specifically, why you're one of my favorite people to carry the load.
Because I was a Marine, or am a Marine.
There you go. That's all it is. I mean,
that's all there is to it, right?
It's that simple. I mean, we got some good people here, but I mean,
right.
It's like Jake Schick said at the kickoff the other night, which was a fantastic event, by the way. It's funny how Clint and Steven, these Navy SEALs, what do? They bring us Marines in to actually get stuff done.
That's right.
So
that's right. What was the when we're reminded we're at the Department of the Navy, we would say yes, the men's department.
The men's department, absolutely.
I probably don't even know if I can say that anymore.
Hey, remember, no politics in this show. No politics. Okay. But no, what was really funny is I was giving a lot of people grief, I was giving some of the other services grief, and a lot of folks came up to me afterwards. They're like, "Man, I love it when you take those digs at the other services." And a lot of people don't understand that that's just part of the service. That's what we do. I mean, we get blasted all the time about being the knuckle draggers. And that's okay. We love it. I mean, that's just the banter that everybody enjoys.
Exactly.
So JJ, we're going to talk a little bit today about your involvement in Carry the Load. We're going to talk a little bit about your time in service, but I love talking to people because I've never had this conversation with you. Tell us who Jj Leonard was before the service.
Okay, so grew up in Dallas, and mostly in the Lake Highlands area.
Mm-hmm.
So was fortunate enough, I grew up playing sports, loved sports, and I love Dallas Cowboys, love watching football. I didn't start playing football until 7th grade. I actually played soccer growing up a lot, and then as I got bigger and taller, it became clear that. And I wanted to start playing football. I went to Lake Highlands Junior High and started doing that. And as I got bigger and taller, it was I told them my 7th grade year that I wanted to be a running back or a linebacker, and they said, "That's great. You're going to be an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman or both." And so that was the beginning of my football career. And I mentioned that because that kind of helped shape my path into the military.
Okay.
And I obviously there's a lot more about Jj Leonard pre-military than just sports and football. But I really did have a great upbringing. Both of my grandfathers served in the military, both career, one Army for 32 years, was a Chief Warrant Officer 5, and then my grandfather on my mom's side was 20 years in the Navy. A lot of that was reserves, but so had a lot of learned a lot from them. Loved hearing them tell stories. They both, greatest generation served in World War II, so helped shape also my just admiration and respect for the military and for our country, and just I think that also led to me wanting to serve. So by the time I started getting to high school and my senior year, I was recruited by different schools to play football. Some of those schools being the academies, and I went on a visit to Annapolis and visited the Naval Academy and was just fell in love. I knew I wasn't going to play football on Sundays. Even as good as I thought I was, I knew that wasn't going to happen. They used to joke they used to time my 40-yard dash with a calendar. So yeah. So it was like would I have gone, necessarily the path I went if it wasn't for football? Yes, I had good grades, et cetera, but I looked at that opportunity to go to one of the academies and then to serve after that for a minimum of 5 years. And I fell in love with the idea. So my head coach in high school was a former Marine who had served in Vietnam. And, I knew that if, hey, I could go through his 2-a-days and our coaching staff. I mean, I learned so many lessons from him and from them that I took with me into the service. And so all of that combined, just was very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to accept an appointment to the Naval Academy in 1991.
So your high school coach was a Vietnam Marine. Is that correct?
Yes. Coach Zafudo.
And I would imagine that there are times, kind of like I mentioned the other night at the, at the kickoff, if there are certain things when they're happening, I kind of imagine a drill instructor or let's just leave it at drill instructor, kind of standing there going, this is what you should be doing. Do you have that same recollection of coach?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I Coach Zafudo and then his staff, because they were all about discipline. He was always preaching that we will keep our poise. We wore a uniform on everybody wore the same outfit on game day, and he had an itinerary for everything that we did. And it was yes sir, no sir. He said, if you said huh or yeah, I mean, you're running at the end of practice. So we all had short haircuts. It was very, really tight knit group, very diverse group. Just learned a lot. And so, yeah, but once I went through plebe summer at the academy, I was like I said, Coach Zafudo would get on me, and just like the upperclassmen would, and I could handle it. So, or at least, that was what I told myself.
So you mentioned The Greatest Generation, phenomenal book. And I think that came out after you were at the academy though. So how did reading that book, and for anyone who hasn't read that book, I completely agree. One of the best. I thought Tom Brokaw did a phenomenal job with that book. How did that change your perspective on your service? And I realize we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but as you served in the Marine Corps, how did reading that book change your perspective?
Well, I hate to admit, Todd, that I haven't read that book.
Oh, I thought you said you had. Okay.
No. I referenced A Greatest Generation, but
okay.
That's still on the list of a stack of books. Matter of fact, that I intend on reading that I haven't yet. But yes, both my grandparents being a part of the Greatest Generation and serving in World War II and Korean Wars, it really.
Well, then let me slightly change the question then, because you didn't read the book, but you heard the stories from the Greatest Generation. I know you referenced that. Mm-hmm. Tell me how that altered your perspective of things, because having read the book, I can tell you that was the humility of that generation was
absolutely. They just there was a call to serve our country, and they went. They didn't ask questions. They were like, where do I sign up? How quickly can I get in? My grandfather, who was in the Army, lied about his age when he was 17 to enlist, and said he was 18. And I guess they didn't check the birth certificate or whatnot. But so he enlisted when he was 17, and it was just, they didn't think twice about it.
Right.
story after story after story.
So, again, when you start talking about the greatest generation, you talk about humility, and you said they didn't ask questions. You're exactly right. They didn't ask questions. It was very similar to a lot of America after 9/11. Now, you obviously served prior to 9/11, but you were, if I'm not mistaken, you were either just out or you were still in the reserves.
Still in the reserves
during 9/11. What do you remember about that day?
I think shock was the primary emotion, disbelief. I remember, I think everybody does remember exactly where you were. I just started, actually I was in transition between finishing up a job that I'd had in telecom and then starting my career in commercial real estate. But I remember exactly where I was. I remember initially thinking, obviously, that it was an accident and a small plane, and then a video came out and a second plane. It was just like, then it was okay, we're under attack, and it, just could not believe that that was occurring, on American soil, and so anger obviously ensued, and then just wanting there to be proper justice for those who are involved, and if that spread into other countries, then that might be part of it, which it obviously
that was obviously there was the greatest generation. They had Pearl Harbor, and that was our generation's Pearl Harbor, if you will. Tell me about your time in service. You were an intel officer, and for those of us who have served long enough, we understand the paradox in saying military intelligence. But that's
exactly.
Hey, I don't hold you accountable for that, JJ. So what was it like being or explain to everybody what an intelligence officer is?
So actually, they had just started. General Krulak had just implemented a new, broken the intelligence officer discipline into 4 MOSs or specialties, and it was ground intelligence, who worked with scout sniper platoons, signals intelligence, which is more dealing with NSA and different agencies, and then there was aviation intelligence, which is what I did, and then human intelligence, which was essentially that they would work with the CIA. A lot of times those folks would have beards, long hair, be in country in different places and off the radar.
Sounds like you're talking about a couple of people we know.
Yeah, exactly. So I went the aviation intelligence route and was fortunate enough to be stationed in Miramar, which was a Navy base that changed to a Marine Corps base, or Marine Corps Air Station. And it's part of the BRAC, the Realignment and Closure Act, that I think was passed in 95. So I got out there in 96, and I was with Marine Aircraft Group 11, which is an F-18 air group, and then deployed with them with one of the squadrons, the VMFA 323, which was the Death Rattlers. And
I love the names of the squadrons, the Death Rattlers, the Night Stalkers. I mean, you name it. There's some great names in there.
Oh yeah,
almost as funny as now. Did you have a call sign?
You know what? They tried different call signs that, and it was hard for any of them to stick because my name is, a nickname.
Okay.
So I was just like, JJ was so easy, and they threw everything against the wall, but it was always kind of came back to JJ. So there were some that I probably couldn't share on the air.
And that's always the way those nicknames go.
Yeah. So, but all of my buddies and my counterparts were all pilots. They all had call signs. All great people, great guys, and So and my job as an intelligence officer really was to understand the enemy's capabilities, specifically with respect to, well, it's respect to targeting and targets we're taking out if we're not involved in what we call close air support, which is supporting infantry. If we're actually taking out targets, so which was our responsibility as part of our carrier battle group, was to work with the Air Force and then the British in Kuwait and Saudi to keep essentially Saddam Hussein and the no-fly zones, the UN Security Council resolutions, and all that was going on kind of throughout the 90s. Really was keeping that, keeping those tight and ensuring that between the 33rd and 36th parallel, we owned that sky, and there were strikes we ended up doing numerous, which were planned. So we had to understand, okay, what are the enemy's capabilities against what are the threats against our aircraft, against the battle group. So yeah, that was a lot. I can go into a lot of details about more that we did, but really it's taking all sources of intelligence, and in the carrier you have what's called a SCIF or a carrier intel center, and that's where it's all secured, obviously, because there's classified information in there, and we do a lot of strike planning and analysis, get imagery, we get reports that came out through a lot of different sources. So you had to take all of that and boil it down and make a concise recommendation to anyone from the pilots who are going on the mission to the admiral who heads up the entire carrier battle group, who I briefed on quite a few occasions.
Yeah, and obviously, when we talk about intelligence in the military, we talk about information, and information is obviously, the most important thing, especially the guys like me who operated on the ground. We needed intel. I mean, we needed information, because otherwise you're walking into the unknown, and as a human being, there's no greater fear than the unknown. And so, although we've always given you guys a tremendous amount of hard time, and rightfully so, it's kind of like, weather forecasting. You take the data that you have, and I don't want to speak for Pete Delkus. Pete may be watching this tonight, but you take the data that you have and you draw conclusions from that data, and sometimes it's right on, sometimes it's not. And so, with all that being said, how do you think the military intelligence of today operates when you start thinking about unmanned aircraft? That to me is one of the strange. It's a bit of it's an interesting mix. We've got unmanned aerial vehicles fighting battles and wars. How does a guy like you come to terms with that? Because so much of your data was based on human gathering factors. Now you're relying on a vehicle flying high above. Is it a different world to you, or do you just kind of shake your head, or what?
It absolutely is a different world, just as today's a different world, in a civilian world, right? As it was, as we were back in the 90s. I mean, and a lot of that is because of technology and how technology has come along. And we really started to see it evolve when I was in the service. So, just all the different sources of intelligence, the fact that, we could gather all this information in the middle of the Persian Gulf and consolidate it and get it real time. And we had the bandwidth in 1999 to be able to take imagery on board and, put presentations together and do all that. Well, that we were, and GPS, munitions were just starting to come online. Back then it was a lot more laser guided, either self laser or, laser guided to a target from another plane, or site, bombing. And so the technology started to evolve, and it kept evolving. And I think there's still, and there always will be, the human element of it, and that will never go away. It can't, because there are UAVs, they gather intelligence, but there's always going to be, we're people, right? And there's nations, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, and there's got to be those individuals who can disseminate or aggregate, collect, process, analyze, and then disseminate that information. So yes, there's a lot of things that have become automated, or that you've taken some of the risk of error out of it, I guess, because of advances in technology, and I think that's good. Hey, if it means fewer mistakes and less loss of life, and then I think that's awesome. But I think there will always be a human element.
So I've heard you say that the basic course, okay, or excuse me, the basic school, what we refer to in the Marine Corps as TBS. You learned a lot about yourself at the basic school. What did you learn about yourself? I mean, can you pinpoint anything in particular that just really resonates with you? And for those who don't know what the basic school is, it is a 6-month crash course into everything you need to know, but we're afraid to ask about the Marine Corps. It's not, and for everybody out there watching, it's not officer candidate school. It's the basic course, meaning I'm going to learn the basics. What did you learn about yourself there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learned really what it meant to be a Marine. I think that was because even at the Naval Academy, we had it was a very Marine flavor to it. If you look at the brigade of midshipmen all the way down regiment, battalions, companies, I mean, that's all. And a lot of people don't understand that 16 to 18% of the graduates coming out of there each year are Marine Corps.
What percentage?
16 to 18%, at least when I was there.
That's higher than I realized.
Yeah. And so it fluctuates just based on the needs of the Corps, I think, and the all those dynamics that go in year out. But I saw it as, I knew I wanted to be in the Marine Corps. I knew that I wanted the challenge of that. I wanted just to go. There's nothing wrong with being on a ship or being a submarine and being a pilot in the Navy. I really felt drawn to go toward the Marine route. And then so when I got to the basic officer course, and really you learn, like, I don't think you touched on this part of it, but all Marine officers have the common ground of going through that course, regardless of what specialty, but they learn what it means, at a certain level to be, why the Marine Corps exists, which is, our infantry, right? And the tactics of infantry. And so what does the ground battle look like? And every other specialty in the Marine Corps exists to support that effort. And what we were told by the major, who was the head of our Major Conger, who was leader of our basic school class, he said, if there's World War III and we're in a war of attrition, and we need to pull officers who are aviation intelligence officers into the infantry front, I mean, you have that training and that understanding of what that means. I mean, you've gone through, offense, defensive tactics, war week we had there, rifle, pistol training, the whole deal. It's like, it's all geared towards having that understanding of what the foundation of the Marine Corps is, which, I'm paying you a lot of homage here, obviously, but it's the truth, is why it's the infantry. It's supporting the ground pounders, if you will.
So is there, and first of all, I appreciate the homage. I mean, I'm just a regular grunt, is there, Is there any particular thing that stands out from your time in service? Is there, whether it be at the basic school, for a lot of people, they don't realize it. I mean, at the academy, that is time in service.
Yeah.
When you're in the Persian Gulf, is there any particular story that still stays with you to this day that guides you in your 25 years of marriage to your high school sweetheart, that guides you in your conduct of regular business duties at Stream Realty? What is there anything like that that stands out?
Yeah, I'd have to say it was. There are a couple of going back to the academy, and there's a couple of different inflection points along the way, and when I went on the deployment, that was June of 99 through December of 99, and the workups probably for the previous 7 months. So all of the training we did either in Fallon, Nevada or out actually on the carrier, for 3.5 week increments, getting ready as a carrier battle group to go out and deploy and so being in the Persian Gulf and planning probably 12 to 15 different missions and strikes. I mean, we flew sorties daily over the no-fly zone and enforced the no-fly zone. And there was
I got to stop you. When you say flew sorties, people hear that expression. What the hell is a sortie?
It's basically,
I say it, but I don't know what it means.
It's basically one of the the flights that was planned for that particular area of space over Iraq. But it doesn't have to be Iraq. I mean, sorties are like it could be, but it's basically referring to flights and
I know, but I don't know where the hell sortie came from. I got to study that.
Like half the things that we would roll off our tongue, we probably had no idea where it came from. We just
that's my
we knew what it meant. And when you have a glossary of acronyms and terms book that's GOAT, you know that you talk in acronyms. So
oh my gosh, I've never even heard that one. No, I've never used that one.
We had a glossary of acronyms and terms, and underneath it said GOAT. And it was like that thick, and it was like, okay, because there's so many acronyms, you kind of pull it out and say, oh, that's what that means.
Well, and that's how you found your way into the commercial real estate business. We got just as many acronyms in the real estate world as we had in the Marine Corps, it seems like.
Oh yeah, I just it's a perfect career for me.
So anyway, I totally derailed you there over sorties, so I apologize. But
no,
tell me that moment. What is it that stands out?
Well, there was just the amount of responsibility I was given as a 27-year-old captain. I'll never have that amount of responsibility again. I lead a team, and we have 16 million square feet of office space, and I'm very blessed. And obviously, I look at my responsibility as a husband and father in a whole different category. But as far as just from a your job, the amount of responsibility I was given, briefing pilots, telling them what's essentially ensuring that if we were going to attack a certain site, that there weren't going to be civilian casualties, using all of our information. What's the best munition to use? What's the threat? Are there AAA or anti-aircraft artillery or surface-to-air missiles or surface-to-surface missiles? And all those things existed, and we had to be very aware of them and monitor them. And Saddam kind of moved all those around like a shell game. So during the latter part of the Clinton administration, when we were there, the U.S. and British, planned a strike into southern Iraq that was, I don't know how much detail I can go into it at this point, but it was to essentially take out a lot of these anti-aircraft artillery pieces that were, always posing a threat to our pilots, because even though they wouldn't turn their radar on, which would allow them to be, much more accurate, some of these would reach up to 35,000 feet and have pretty big explosions in the air they would fire surface to air missiles, but they were afraid to turn their radars on because we had, radar seeking missiles. So, I would just say that there was one particular mission that we planned over 3 days, and it kept being called off. So like every single day we plan it and then be called off, and then, for various reasons. And then we got the green light, and that ended up being an incredibly complicated and an incredibly successful, particular mission. And just being able to plan that, to brief, the squad, all of the squadrons, Navy and Marine Corps, the battle group commander, all of it was just, I'll never forget it. I tell that story often when people ask about the deployment, what I did. I mean, that's the one thing that pops in my mind, as that one story that pops in my mind.
Did you ever get it wrong?
What's that?
Did you ever get it wrong?
That's something that I would, when I was going to bed at night saying my prayers on the ship, I would pray that I didn't ever get it wrong. But it's one of those things where a lot of times you didn't know, other than you trusted all the information that you had. And I think if you remember back in the 90s in the Saddam regime there, he just wanted to have an incident to put on, CNN, or have something, of note that would make headlines, as look at the oppressive, U.S. and British coalition forces. And so that was, we were very careful. We really were. We were very careful. We made sure, they flew, at one point there was 2 million plus flight hours flown over Iraq by coalition forces without a Class A mishap, which occurs, I don't know what the total is. If there's pilots listening, they'll probably, I'm butchering this, but that's 4 times the number of normal flight hours that you don't have a Class A mishap, which is some sort of, maintenance malfunction in the plane, or something that occurs where you have to divert and land and different things. And that's a testament to the maintenance crews, and just how tirelessly they worked to make sure that the pilots' lives were safe and the aircraft going up were safe. And so that made a huge impact on me, because those were my friends, my best friends.
That's kind of like, the way you're describing that, it's kind of like, you're driving down the road, you see some kind of manufacturing plant off to the side, and it says, 377 days since our last safety accident or violation or something like that. And really what you're talking about is the 2 million plus hours was 4 times better than the average, or than what the expectation was.
That happened in peacetime training missions and things like that. And so and we were flying out of Kuwait and Saudi and off of ships and over hostile airspace, and so it's phenomenal. It's a testament to like I said, the crews. Wow. As well as the pilots, and just how amazingly well prepared and trained they were. I'm constantly blown away.
But it goes deeper than that. It's not just the pilots and the crew chief and the aircraft mechanics. It's also guys like you. It's the intel, it's the supply, it goes down to the cooks, making sure that that they're taken care of. And I love that, because that to me that's what it's all about. It's not, the pilots get the glory, okay? The trigger pullers get the glory, if you will. But at the end of the day, and I can relate this to business all day long, it is a team effort. Maybe one person gets the glory, the guy that takes the shot, that catches the pass, whatever it goes back to your days of playing lineman. If
I didn't
one
get the glory.
person, no, you didn't get the glory, but you shared
Right.
in the glory. You
Right.
had the belief and the understanding that, oh my gosh, I contributed, however small. If my part had broken down,
Yeah.
none of this happens.
Everyone had to pull their weight. Everybody had to be prepared, and it was a team effort all the way down the chain of command. And that was, I mean, those are lessons that I still take with me, today in my day-to-day life, and just how important that is. Whatever your team is, like you said, you can translate that into business world so easily. And so,
Sure.
yeah, it was kind of a symphony, and everybody playing their part. No one part more important than the other. So,
I like that. It's a symphony. It really truly is. And I mean, I think that, it Carry the Load. I think we have a lot of symphonic, tendencies because it is so important that everybody plays that role. So you get out of the Marine Corps, you find your way to Carry the Load. How did you find your way to Carry the Load?
quick, easy answer is Stephen Hawley. So Stephen, 2011, he picked up the phone, called me. So he had moved back, obviously, to Dallas. Prior to that, we had connected. He was at Staubach Company as a commercial real estate broker and doing the same, basically on the other side. I represent landlords, he represents tenants. And so we connected. Obviously, he has a Lake Highlands background as well as a Naval Academy background and football background there. And he was about 5 years behind me. So I knew, my mother knew Stephen's mother, Paget, really well. And so we knew the family. And when he was coming in, I had gone, but had come back and was really excited because he was from my high school and was going to go up there to play football. And so after he got obviously out of the SEALs, moved back to Dallas, they started Carry the Load in 2011, Clint and Stephen, and Stephen picked the phone up and asked me to help grow the cause and to take it, to be on the team that helped really take us from our first year, which is obviously a small gaggle around White Rock Lake that, as Clint joked the other night, half of them were Stephen's relatives.
Oh, no, it wasn't half. It was like 90%.
And it's the 6 degrees of Stephen Hawley in commercial real estate. I'm like, how many relatives do you have that are like, they're everywhere? It's amazing. But yeah, so all kidding aside, he picked up the phone, called me, and I would, he had me at hello. I was all in and started, with the team that helped plan the first Memorial March that was at Rivershine Park, and got to participate in that. I just super passionate about it. It resonated with me, and with immediately like filled a void that I had with how do I make sure to honor the lives and legacies of my classmates and friends who were killed in action, and not just them, but all of those. And the fact that we weren't doing Memorial Day right as a country resonated with me.
So you hit on two things that I'd like you to go a little deeper on. Number one is the void you felt, and number two is the classmates that you had lost. And can you go a little deeper on that?
Yeah, I think the void that I had felt is just, when you leave, when you leave the service and you transition to, this, and it's there's a lot of it you never leave behind, but there's a certain bit of it that just is not the same, right? You can't replicate that way of life in, working in the private sector, being in commercial real estate. It's just it's a completely different perspective. And I had so many friends that went and served and stayed in for a career and went to Iraq, to Afghanistan, some multiple deployments. And I just felt like that I would always remember them. I would always talk about them, but like, what could we do? There was, I didn't know what was missing exactly, but I couldn't put it into the same perspective like Clint was able to put it into, and when he put it into words. But when he did, it hit me upside the head like a ton of bricks. I was like, that's the perspective that America's missing, and that's the perspective, and that void was just wanting America to be better than that. And then the classmates and friends of mine that were killed in action were three individuals. Doug Zembeck, who was the Lion of Fallujah, who was a wrestler at the academy, was in my basic officer course. Megan McClung, who was actually the first female Marine officer killed over in overseas in action, and then Eric Christensen. And Eric Christensen is a Navy SEAL. He was actually involved in Operation Red Wing, in the Black Hawk that went down there. Going to try to find Marcus Luttrell and the others. Those who read Lone Survivor, seen the movie, know exactly what I'm talking about. Eric led that mission, and so I mean, these are folks that I was close to for 4 years, and was in classes with, and then two of the three I went through the basic officer course with. Eric Christensen was in my room like every other night, because he's sailing the sailing team with one of my roommates, who is an incredible sailor, which you figure at Navy you should gotta have a good sailing. but yeah, it just they're my heroes, and I want to tell their story as much as I can. They're, along with my grandfathers and a couple of others whose families have impacted our family in such a big way, and they lost loved ones, that I wanted to carry their legacy and their memory and ensure they were never forgotten. Ben Sclaver and Ben Roberts, and so I want to tell their story. I want to talk about them. I'm super excited to be going up to Seattle tomorrow. I've been in communication with Megan's mother, Ree, who lives up there, and she's not able to make it to our kickoff, but she's going to watch on Facebook Live. And she sent a bunch of pictures of Megan that she had, and we just really enjoyed the connection that we were able to kind of remake. I had met her years ago at an academy event where we had essentially a lot of those who, from our class, their family had come and gathered with us at one of the reunions. So yeah,
you're headed up to Seattle tomorrow. And it's one of the things I've learned in hosting these podcasts is sometimes it's better just sit back and shut up and let people talk. And I'm listening to the way you're talking about these three individuals. Doug Zembeck, really a lot of Marine Corps folklore in modern time. Megan has a very unique and unfortunate distinguishing aspect to her, and Christensen, I get it. I mean, you served alongside some pretty unique individuals, and I hear the way that you're talking about them, and I mean, it moves me just listening to it, and so I'm really excited to follow the Seattle leg as you head up there and kick things off, and I'm looking forward to hearing the reports back from it. And JJ, I learned, as long as I've known you, I learned some things about you tonight that are fantastic. And I mean, you've lived a good life already to this point. I mean, you've experienced some great things.
Well, it sounds like we need to go grab a beer and catch up more. So there are things about you that I don't know that I need to know, and so
there are things about me you don't want to know either.
Exactly.
Right now.
Which is why I said we'll grab a beer.
Well, JJ, man, I appreciate it as always. I love talking to you. It's
Likewise,
great,
Todd.
great meeting with a former Marine and fellow Marine.
And thank you, by the way, for, um, and this shameless plug, I guess, for you, but like for doing this program, for being so passionate about Carry the Load, for leading, the Dallas Memorial March and just that massive endeavor that it is every year, and year in and year out, and just being such an ambassador for the organization. You've been an inspiration to me, so I didn't want to leave this program without saying thank you for that.
Wow. I'm very humbled to hear that from you. I really, truly am.
I mean it.
Thank you. I mean, it's, I think like you, I mean, it's all the things that, people say, thank you for your service. And for the longest time, I didn't know what to say. And now when somebody says that, I always kind of respond with something to the effect of, I promise you, it's more my pleasure than anything else, because it truly is. It's, like you, it's very fulfilling, and Carry the Load has been a tremendous plug in that gap. So JJ, thanks for joining us, man. I really, as always, I was serious. I mean, you're one of my favorite people, and I love it.
Likewise.
So thank you very much for your time tonight. And
my pleasure.
For all of you out there, remember, we're about to kick it off. I mean, it is that time in America. And JJ,
tune in tomorrow.
Tune in tomorrow.
Sorry, Thursday.
That's right. I don't think we're going to follow your flight up.
No, that would be odd. I'm not going to do live Facebook updates for my flight.
No, you won't, but other people will, and that's good. We want that to happen. So, JJ heads up to Seattle tomorrow, and I'm actually going to be in New York before you know it, as part of the East Coast kickoff. And JJ, I think we have a good idea about who you're carrying. He told us the three people that he's carrying every day. But America, remember, there's always one question you need to have a very good answer to, and that is, who are you carrying?